here with Abel Ramirez, and Abel and I connected on Facebook. Abel is a small business owner, a real estate agent, content creator, and dad of three kids. And Abel and I come from working in the same industry. So we may talk a little real estate and the pros and cons of being a business owner, a local business owner here in Syracuse and Central New York. So if you're listening to this or you're watching it later on, feel free to drop a comment on what you think, share it with anyone that you might get any value out of it, and help us build this small community. So with that, Abel, thanks for joining me here today.
Well, hello, Jason. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you.
Outstanding. So the first thing I want to start with is something that you had sent me, that you actually delivered one of your children on the side of 41. I had to go to there first because I thought this is a super great story to be able to kind of kick this off with.
Yeah, so this happened in 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, right when everything was shut down and it was businesses were closing. It was hard to get around, um, and it happened around 1:30 in the morning. And we had two kids previously, so we kind of knew what to expect. But
Sure.
this, it caught off guard, right? She
Yeah.
wakes me up in the morning. Hey, my water broke. So I'm like, all right, you're fine. She took a shower. We got her things, and we got on our way to the hospital. But it was only when we got to the highway that the pains really started to, show up.
Yep.
And I thought, yeah, it's labor pains. I don't know what that feels like, but I've seen it, so I'm like, okay, baby, you got this. We're almost there. We're gonna make it. And then she was like, no, we're not gonna make it. Stop the car and call 911. And it was creepy, man, because I turned on the dumb light and I looked down and I could see her, taking her seatbelt off, and I could see the hair, man. That at that point, I'm like, no, this isn't happening.
Oh
Throughout the
man.
whole thing, I'm like, okay, she's in pain. Let me comfort her. Let me get there as fast as I can. I was driving really fast. I don't know how fast, but I wasn't even looking. I was really fast. But 1 in the morning, who's on the highway anyway, right?
Sure.
Um, but it's on the exit. So when you go 481 south, the exit that you take to 81 north, it was on
Hmm.
that exit that
Yep.
I realized, hey, this is happening, and I cannot continue to drive otherwise. Who knows? So I
Yep.
stop the car. I get over to the passenger seat, and it was like literally like one push. I got there at the right time. I put
Oh
my
man.
hands, and I'm like pulling the baby out, but not really, because it was literally her pushing the baby out.
Yep.
um and then I left the baby in between, her legs and her belly. And then at that point, I was already on the call with the 911 person, and they're like kind of walking me through and asking me questions. Hey, what's the baby doing? And you need to find something to tie the umbilical cord. And I'm like, I'm in the car.
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
and I've never done this before. I'm not good with blood. I'm the kind of
Yep.
person that passes out if I see blood. So
Right.
I'm not
Right.
good with that stuff. But luckily, 2020, we all kept a mask in the car, right? So I took
Yep.
the string off and tied the umbilical cord and waited for the ambulance to get there. And it was about a 20-minute wait because they went to the wrong exit or something like that.
Yep.
Um, but it was definitely an experience that I never thought that I would go through, that I did not think that I was capable of handling, but one that I'll definitely never forget.
Now you can remind your youngest that
Yep.
I brought you into this world. I can take you back out.
If he ever gets me attitude, I'm gonna take it down to that same exit on the highway and be like, "You were born here. You deserve nothing."
and, and I don't know if you know this, but I spent almost 20 years working at 911.
Really?
And yeah, and there's been there's been a few calls where I never had the opportunity to deliver a baby on the phone. Got very close on a few occasions, but by the time it got to the point where mom was going to push, the ambulance happened to walk in. So that's typically the end of the phone
Whew.
call.
Wow,
Um, but I had some colleagues that same thing delivered babies over the phone.
that's crazy.
Um,
I didn't
yeah,
think that was a thing, but wow.
yeah, and luckily, in that industry, and we're doing that work. There's a set of protocols that's all on the computer. You can go through and you go step by step by step by step to make sure everything's taken care of.
You
But
have
I have,
script, like if this happens, then do this, or
Yeah, it's very much you ask a question, they answer the question, you go to the next question and or direction, and it goes from there. So that's probably what went into a lot of what they told you about finding the string. And then I've a lot of what we used to say, and it's funny, I can remember this verbatim was, get dry towels and make sure in a clean, dry split, all that stuff. Um,
that's crazy. Yeah, you probably felt a lot of anxiety working on 911 for so long.
Eh, well, yeah. There's, some days were good, and other days were very taxing on the mind.
Oof.
I can remember a few times though where people were on the way to the hospital, they were sick or they were injured or
Hmm.
they had a baby that was coming, and it was like, listen, instead of you stopping and waiting for the ambulance to get there, just keep going because the best care you're going to get is where you're headed to. So just keep going. But that's great, and it's those those kind of stories that'll last a lifetime and that you can
For
actually
sure.
share with the kids as they get older.
Yeah, like I said, it's
Um,
one experience I'll definitely never forget.
oh yeah. So uh, jumping or kind of pivoting here, you work in real estate. How long you been
Mhm.
in real estate business?
I started real estate on 2022. I started in
Okay,
March before the
okay.
whole thing broke out. Yeah.
What drew you to work in real estate in the area?
Well, helping people, that I've always been a big I felt a sense of purpose helping others. And real estate, when you think about it, especially for first time home buyers, this is one of their biggest investments, if not the
Oh
biggest
yeah,
investments of their life.
yep.
And helping them get to that finish line, to
Yep.
me gives me great satisfaction. And I had a very bad experience when I purchased my first home. I'm
Mm-hmm.
Hispanic, so at the time I did not know much about how things work over here. And
Right.
I won't mention the name of the agent, but we didn't have a good experience, and we ended up in a house that gave us a lot of trouble. It was in a flood zone that wasn't this close
Oh.
to us, so we ended up paying flood insurance.
Yep.
Our house flooded once,
Oh.
um, and it was just bad. The whole experience. So I'm like, hey, I speak Spanish, I speak English now, so I'm in a position where I can use my experience and the knowledge that I've gained throughout the years to help others not make the same mistake. So
Oh, that's
that's why I got into
fantastic.
real estate. Yep.
That's fantastic. Where are you from originally?
Originally from Cuba. Yeah, I moved
Okay,
here in 2010. Yep.
gotcha. Um, yeah, and you know what, that makes I did a little bit of real estate coaching for Jared James a year or two ago, 2 years ago, and I was working with different clients, but one of the clients that I ended up with was a woman in Tokyo, Japan. Now
Wow.
they give me this coaching client. First of all, I'm thinking I don't know anything about real estate in Tokyo, Japan. What the but she taught me as much as I taught her because I got to learn about real estate in Tokyo, Japan, and I was
That's
working with
awesome.
her with real estate coaching. But one of the things that we centralized on was the her being bilingual, and she was one of the very few bilingual real estate agents in Tokyo that could speak English and Japanese. So for you being able to speak Spanish and
Hmm.
English and work in this area, I mean that's a feather in your cap, realistically.
Yeah, and we have a very large Hispanic population here in Syracuse and the surrounding
Yeah,
areas. And if I can help them, at least I can guide them through the process. Like I'm friends with many agents, and sometimes they need help with the translation or something like that. I'm willing to
yeah.
help out, so I've done that in the past.
That's so huge. And it gives you that next, that extra path of your service
Right.
to be able to do that. What's been some of your biggest challenges getting into real estate here in the last year or two?
Well, challenges. It's been really learning because it's a
Hmm.
brand new industry for me.
Yep.
So it's almost been like learning by the experience, and it's been great. I've been surrounded with great agents and great mentors all throughout.
Hmm.
Um, but being new to the industry, um, I'm I'm an immigrant, right? So I'm still learning the culture. I feel like I have a pretty good idea now, but there are things that it takes time. If
Yeah.
you weren't born here, if you didn't grow up here, if you didn't go to school
Right.
here, there are certain things that you kind of have to live through it in order um, to know it, right? But I'm pretty good with embracing the culture and at least showing
Hmm.
that interest. But that's
Yeah.
been one of the challenges that I've encountered.
Yeah, and it's so very important to be able to have that local information to
Mm-hmm.
be able to speak to, if you're selling it, there's a difference between selling a house here in Syracuse and then even going down to Cortland and trying to sell a house.
Right.
It's just, you have to know, even though it's 30 minutes away, you still have to know that market. And I speak from experience because I sold a property down in Cortland, but it was difficult because I didn't understand that. I didn't have that great working knowledge of that market there, even though it's only 30 minutes away. So for you, I can see how it would be. You're almost, yeah, I mean, you're learning every aspect of the real estate business, but now you also had to add the layer on. I have to learn as much as I can about Syracuse and Central New York to be able to provide the best information I can to the people I work with.
Right. And you don't have to go as far as Cortland. Even within the same zip code, different neighborhoods behave different.
Oh
There's
yeah.
certain neighborhoods within a zip code that if a house goes up for sale, it's like that's going to be a hot listing,
Hmm.
versus on the same zip code, but maybe to borderline or in a different neighborhood that is probably not going to sell.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, real estate has been complex and challenging for the last 3 or 4 years. This year is definitely taken a different tone. I noticed, that we had the mortgage rates go up, we had buyers slow down, we still don't have a lot of inventory, um, and there is still realistically a lot of cash money being thrown around for one reason or another. Um, so it's been challenging, especially for first time home buyers.
Yep.
It's very challenging, because it can get very frustrating, especially when they're putting in 9, 10, 12 offers,
Mm-hmm.
and just trying to be able to get a home to buy, based on the sheer competition that's out there.
Yeah, I had this one client that we've been working together for almost a year now. We finally got an offer accepted, but it's just that same thing you were talking about. It's a combination of, not having enough inventory, rates
Hmm.
going up. So the longer you're in the market, the less house you can afford because of the interest rates. So
Yeah.
that's not helping. But the
Yep.
fact that there's not enough inventory, and then there's some people with cash out there, it still makes it hard on first time home buyers. And when you're going up against 5, even 10 other offers, it's really difficult to compete. Even if
Yeah.
you're waiving home inspection and you're waiving radon and, no contingencies, the fact that you're, say, FHA, right,
Yeah.
makes your offer not the most appealing to the seller's eye versus a conventional or even a cash offer.
Yeah, yeah, the unfortunately the government insured loans like FHA and VA tend to lose out on many of the multiple offer
Hmm.
situations just based on appraisal and having the
Right.
appraisal process. Um, what's one of the bigger pieces of advice do you give your first time home buyers as you mitigate and go through this local real estate market?
I'd say just be patient,
Yeah.
because sometimes when you feel like you're against the wall, if you have the ability to, say, stay in your apartment or wherever you're living for, say, anywhere from 6 months to a year, to give you
Hmm.
enough time to make sure that what you're buying, it's a good deal, it's a good property. Just be patient, because I know the struggle, of the fear of missing out, but
Yep.
that can actually put you in a bad spot, because, say, you may go beyond your means to acquire a house that then you might not be able to afford later on. And we
Yeah.
know the rates are up really high. They may continue to go up, but they may come down in the future. Just be patient, because,
Yeah.
again, you may find the right house, and the worst thing that could happen, is that buyer's remorse, or say that you ended up getting a house because you went up beyond your means, and
Yeah.
now 3 months later, you're like, oh, look at this house that I could have gotten. So just be patient.
Yeah, a lot of different factors have changed the way real estate is acquired. I mean, you talked about mortgage rates, and mortgage rates are higher than the 2.75 that and 3% that everybody got used to. But realistically, like I
Yep.
tell my buyers, the 6 and 7% we're at right now historically is average.
It's average. It really is.
Yeah, but everybody thinks about that 3% that we may or may not ever get back there. But it's just, I tell people, I talk with clients about timing. What's the right time? And it's really, if you're not ready now, if you're not in the financial position, if you're not prepared to make that jump into purchasing your next home or your first home, is just keep an eye on things. How tumultuous are things going to get as we get towards the end of the year or into the next presidential election year?
Right.
Where does that go? Now, are you predominantly working with buyers, or are you doing buyers and sellers?
I do buyers and sellers, but mostly buyers at this point. Like I said, just
Hmm.
because I have that duolingual
Yeah.
skills, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
People come to me for that because they don't know. They're immigrants like me, and they don't know the process. So I'm there to help them along the way, get them started. I have people that can help with their credit, making sure that they're building credit, because that's something that you're not taught in other countries. That's something
Yeah.
that's new to immigrants here, and
Yep.
sometimes they don't understand that they actually need a good credit or somewhat decent credit in order to qualify for a loan and get the best possible rate. So I can help them educate. So I do work with a lot of buyers mostly, but I do get listings because I'm already in that field. And sometimes I have repeat customers that they were
Yeah.
buyers 3 years ago and now they want to sell. They have babies, they want to get a bigger house. So you know how that works. You start
Oh
you
yeah.
start in the business low, your sphere of influence is very low, but as you continue to be in business, your sphere of influence grows and you get
Oh yeah.
repeat clients, referrals, and that's
Yep.
what really when business starts to bloom.
Yeah, and typically for real estate agents, pull back the curtain a little bit. Typically for real estate agents, if you're in the business 3, 4, 5 years, that's when those referrals really start
Hmm.
start to come in, and that's the best kind of business. Is you get those referrals, you get the repeat customers, because typically if people are going to have to sell a home to buy a new one for whatever reason, it'll be within that 5 to 7 year mark. That to me was always the best kind of business, was that referral business at that 3, 4, 5 year mark. Have you? I was just thinking. Have you thought about really niching down your business to um, market towards immigrants or people new to the area, or who other folks that maybe looking to move to the area from out of the country, that and kind of projecting yourself out to that client pool.
Yes, definitely. But for that, I feel like we need a good team of people. Not I think this isn't a kind of niche that one person can really handle.
Right.
One person that comes to mind is Mark McBain. I'm good friends
Hmm.
with him, but he's
Yep.
the kind of person that works literally until like 3 a.m. He does like I don't know 90 deals or 100 deals a year, but I'm sorry to say he doesn't have a life. I love you, Mark. You're
Yep.
hardworking, but I'm a father of 3 kids. I have a small
Yeah.
business. If I were to do that kind of business, I would not be able to do it on my own. It's just impossible, especially with
Yeah.
that level of attention. Because
Yep.
if you think about it, if you have to educate them, because they're immigrants, right? On
Yeah.
credit and sometimes walk them by the hand, which I've done multiple times, and helping them fill out the application because they don't know English, right? So you
Yep.
have to be there every step of the way. For most agents, that's not a problem. You just send out a link and people fill out a mortgage application, whatever. But for me, it takes twice the effort because I have to be there every step of the way to translate or to make sure they're filling out the right information. So,
Hmm.
in order for me to niche down to that market, I would need a good team of people that would support me to do
Right.
that. But I'm already
Yep.
doing it. Like I said, I'm at a small scale. I'm already doing that. It's just that in order to grow and reach out to that massive immigrant community here in Syracuse, you need a team behind you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And kind of unpack a couple of things that you were saying there, like, with, you mentioned Mark working at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I know agents that
Hmm.
11, 12, 1 in the morning, they're writing contracts or sending
Yep.
emails and doing stuff, which is fine. I mean, the truth with real estate, you get out of it what you put into it.
Hmm.
But I also learned that trying to work 20 of the 24 hours of the day is not healthy. You're really, if you're trying to return an email or a text message or a call at 10, 11 o'clock at night, listen, that client, that person is not going to burst in, most likely not going to burst into flames before 8 or 9 in the morning.
Right.
So it's like, to me, I've decided 2-3 years back that there's a start to my workday, there's an end to my workday, and anything after the end can wait till the next day. Um, you can get a lot done during a normal 8 hour or 10 hour day versus trying to work 20 out of the 24 hours. But the other thing I wanted to ask you about was, uh, you know, how do you, what kind of marketing are you doing? Or, I mean, obviously, I see you got a podcast set up and stuff, but, or, what kind of marketing have you gotten into, or, are using video or using Instagram? What are you working on to be able to get yourself in front of potential clients?
As far as marketing, I mean, I tried realtor leads for my second year, and that was okay. I can't
Yeah.
say that it was great, but it was definitely something. I did get
Yep.
some leads out of there, um, but at this point I'm focused on um, referral, social medias, and people that I already know, and reaching out to those that resonate with the kind of services that I can provide. When you think about a real estate, I think last time I looked, there were what, like 3,000 agents in Syracuse or something like that, and that
Yeah.
my number might be, it could have changed.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a large number of realtors that are, or people that are licensed here in Syracuse. So in order for you to stand out, you have to be doing something different, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at. I feel like, if I just focused in my market, I'm fine doing my 10 to 20 deals a year,
Yeah.
especially um, with the level of engagement that I can commit to right now, because I don't want
Right.
to overwork myself to the point where I'm like, I'm taking in too many clients that I cannot handle. I've
Yeah.
referred out clients because I'm like, straight out, I'm sorry, I don't have the time, but I have a good person that I can refer you to. I've done that, so I'm just really focusing down in the market that I'm in right now, and the clients that I'm working with, so that I can
Yep.
provide the best service. I feel like if you try to do too much, sometimes you might not be able to give out the best quality service, and that speaks bad from you, because then that person might not get the attention that they needed, and then they ended up not getting the services that they wanted, and might lead to a bad experience, and that's what I don't want.
Oh yeah, 100%. Even just recently, I had a a new client referred to me because she had a bad experience, or not a favorable experience with another agent. Really, some agents are very responsive, and
Hmm.
some kind of manage their business as they go along, and to each their own. I'm not about to criticize it, but
Right,
if
but that
if
might
you're
be
not
part of it, right? You're trying to do too
right.
much with too little.
Yeah, yeah, and if you're not providing, it all comes down to service and building relationships.
True.
It really never really matters about the number of deals or how much money you're making. It's, how am I going to help this client to the best that I can? How do I help this other client to the best that I can, and keep going that way.
Exactly.
I've told buyers all the time, kind of tongue in cheek, listen, don't worry about, because you get asked, well, how much, buyers will ask, how much do I have to pay you? Well, the sellers pay the real estate commission, and don't worry about that. I'll get mine in the end, and that kind of breaks the ice, and they don't ever ask about it ever again.
That's funny, because that's a question that they always ask, like, well, what are your services? What do I have to pay you? And
Yeah,
then you have to explain, like, no, yeah, I'm actually here for you for free, and that's a resource for
yeah,
buyers when you think about
yep,
it. Don't be afraid, because there's buyers that go directly to the listing agent, and there's nothing wrong with that. But
yep,
you have to understand that if you have a free resource, a tool that you can use, to make sure that they're representing you 100%, why not use it? It's free.
yeah, yeah, 100%. So what's some of the things that you enjoy most about this area versus coming from a nice warm climate down in the tropics to being in Syracuse where it snows all the time? What's some of the things you enjoy about the local area?
Well, Syracuse, it's a quiet city. I love the fact that there isn't a lot of traffic. I love
Hmm.
the fact that there's a lot of vegetation. I've traveled, and one of the things that I love the most is when I come back, I can breathe that air of Syracuse. That it just feels pure. It feels
Yeah,
healthy. It feels good. When you go down to New York City, you feel like you can't breathe. I mean, it's just
yeah,
the air just. the air quality doesn't feel quite there. So I
Right.
love that about Syracuse, that it's, you know, a very quiet, good for settle, good for families, good for just about anything. If you want to go on Green Lakes for a walk or a run, you know, there's that. You know, we
Hmm.
got
Yeah.
Destiny USA. I mean, there isn't a whole lot of attractions here in Syracuse, I feel like, but for someone that just likes to be at peace and you know, spend time with your family, it's great.
Yeah. Good. Good. Now, have you been back to Cuba or no?
Just
Oh,
once,
okay.
and that was like 11 years ago.
Okay. And are you American citizen now?
I am, yeah,
Oh,
100%.
outstanding. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Um, yeah, it's always interesting to me when folks, come from a completely different culture and kind of infuse themselves into a long-standing culture, and that could be personally or professionally or living situations or whatever it is. And it can change from state line to state line, but to go from what Cuba is to the opportunities that you have here in the US. That must now, did you come here as a child or?
I was 14 years old, Jason,
Okay.
and one of the things that in Cuba people don't understand is obviously everybody knows it's a communist country,
Yep.
but people don't understand what that's like growing up in a communist country where
Yep.
they're brainwashing you from an early age. You go to school and it's all propaganda, and you're only allowed to be taught certain materials, and you're
Yep.
brainwashed from being from a kid, right? School was like military school. Literally
Yep.
everybody had to be in uniform and a line
Yep.
salute, and we marched down to our classrooms, and it was very um, it was a very controlling environment, to the
Yep.
point where your neighbor can snitch out on you if you're cooking beef. And that might sound like, wait, what?
Wow.
Yeah, because there is no private property in Cuba. The government owns everything. In
Right.
cattle, you're not allowed to consume unless
Yep.
you're like a government official or something like that. So if you acquire beef from a black market or whatever, and your neighbor smells it, they can literally call the cops on you. So it was a very um, not technologically advanced country, to so
Yeah.
to speak. Like now, you know, our phones are always listening to us and everything we say, and when you think about that, and cameras and webcams, and you know, you got Alexa that's always listening to,
Yep.
even though it wasn't like that, but to a certain extent it was, because then you got everybody just watching you and seeing who you're with and what are you saying, and if you say
Yeah.
the wrong thing, you can end up um, in a government, you know, facility, or you may disappear.
Wow.
So it's
Wow.
just it was that environment that I grew up with, and coming to America where you have all this freedom that you can literally say whatever you want. um, and you know, there's pros and cons to that, but I'm a truly believer that we have to protect our freedom here in America. And I've seen the patterns of where I grew up and some of the things that are happening here now.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's concerning as an
Yeah.
American now. But, you know, we take for granted many of the things that we enjoy here.
Oh yeah, for sure. And having that lens that you do,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that just speaks volume for what, maybe some of us that have born, raised, and grown up in the U.S. might
Right.
take a little stock in is, you could seriously be in a communist country with no ownership of anything, and versus the opportunity that's afforded to you here in the U.S. and some other countries. So,
Yeah, it's hard
um,
to appreciate what's always been there. You
right.
know, for our fathers and founders of America, you know, they
Yep.
gave up their life for
Yep.
what we have today. And obviously the early generations knew that and appreciated that. And I'm not saying that most Americans don't appreciate that nowadays, but we have certainly lost. I mean, I've been here 13 years, 12, 13 years, and I've seen a lot of change in those last 10 years.
Yeah.
Um, from I went to high school here, I went to college here, and I remember in those early years how everybody got up and said the Pledge of Allegiance,
Yep.
and towards the end of it, like 5 years later, people weren't even getting up, and that was
Yeah.
fine because hey, um, I'm I'm a religious person, I don't believe it, so I don't stand up and whatever, and because of freedom, right? You're allowed, okay, don't stand up. Like I said, there's pros and cons to everything.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I feel like we as Americans need to protect the liberties and those principles that our founders died for.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So let me ask you this: what's next on the horizon for you? Any big plans, or personally or professionally? What's next on the horizon for you?
Well, I recently became a business owner. That was a dream of mine.
Oh,
Even though
okay.
real estate, it is a business. But when you think about real estate, you're like an independent contractor, right?
Yeah.
Unless you become a broker, and
Right.
then that's when really it becomes a functioning business. That there's many things that go with it.
Yep.
I wanted something that could last beyond my lifetime, my generation, and I
Yep.
always wanted a small business.
Yep.
And we recently acquired Bayberry uniforms in
Oh,
Liverpool and near Kraus, and that was a blessing and something we were praying for. And what can I say? I mean, next in the horizon, I want to grow that business as much as I can because we're supporting our medical professionals here in
yeah.
Syracuse, which is one of the professions that we learned about. They're essential, right? When you
Yeah.
think about many industries out there, how many industries were out of business when COVID happened? I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do believe that COVID kind of revealed a lot of true colors and revealed a lot of stuff that no one thought was ever possible.
For sure.
Businesses closing down and everybody quarantined, not being able to get out of the house. And then certain businesses, they had to continue functioning throughout that time. And healthcare was one of those. So
Yeah.
being able to support them and be there for them, that truly means a lot. And it's one of the business that like I said, I want to grow and see how much we can expand beyond Syracuse.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. And having a service-based business like that, I mean, you get to touch a lot of different folks in a lot of different industries. That's great. So, Abel, I appreciate you joining me here today, and I think there's a lot of different avenues we could go down and have really deep conversations on.
Hmm.
But maybe we can set up a part two.
For
But
sure,
what's
yeah.
what's the best way for people to connect with you?
On Instagram, you can find me as Abelman underscore USA.
Okay.
My phone number is 315-565-8484. And we're located in Liverpool. It's 7608 Oswego Road. So, I mean, I'm here to help out, whether you're buyers that need help with translation to English, or if you're a medical professional looking for uniform. If you're a student, we give a 20% discount to medical students, and we have everything you need from not only your uniform but stethoscopes and everything. I mean, we have embroidery, so if your company wants to get your logo in a hat or a sweater or a t-shirt, we can do that for you too.
Awesome. That's great stuff. Well, Abel, I thank you again for joining me. Anybody that's watching this or maybe listening to it later on, drop a comment below. Let us know what you think. If you have any questions for Abel, if you can't seem to find him on social media, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to connect you with Abel. But the only way we're going to grow this small community is everybody kind of participates, shares out the podcast, and makes us the number one podcast here in Syracuse and Central New York. So,
Let's
Abel, thank
go.
you again for joining me today. And with that, I hope everybody has a great day and take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Have a good day.
Thank you.